Welcome. I'm Ralph from Lumenloop, and I'm here with Jay and Ishan / Soiled from the OrbitCDP team.
Yeah, we need profile pictures here because I feel like they'll be like, Ishan, I don't know who that is. Oh, Soiled. Gotcha.
Yeah.
When I was doing the graphic for this whole thing and I had to grab your profile picture, I'm like, that's how people are gonna know who you are. We should add right next to our names here or something. But
I think I'm the only guy I've ever seen on any type of social media platform with a Gears of War logo. I think that game's super old now, so no one even plays anymore. But yeah, no, I'm like the Gears of War guy. Sometimes when we first joined Stellar, Rob told me I should change my profile picture because they said that's not professional at all. Like you can't have a gear symbol with a skull bleeding. I'm like, no, I'll be fine. Nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Mine's a Halloween picture playing the air guitar in some not appropriate attire for the most part. So I don't think it matters too awful much. But
yeah,
cool. Excited to chat with you, man.
Wow.
yeah.
I'd love to hear the story behind Soiled, though. Like it's a pretty interesting name. I always wondered.
Yeah. So okay, the simple one-liner is it was like Christmas 2013. My dad got an Xbox 360. Like it was a huge line because back in the day, like during Black Friday, everyone actually waited online outside. So huge line around the Best Buy for the new Xbox 360 release. It was like the slim version. And we got home, we placed it down, we bought it, we actually turn it on. It's like, okay, what do you want your name to be? And my dad wanted to put my actual real name, and I was a little kid me was like, we shouldn't put our real name. So we just clicked Xbox 360 generator, and it gave Soiled Chalice 5. So I just stuck with Soiled because that name's too long nowadays. But yeah, that's pretty much the name Soiled, where it comes from.
So Soiled / Ishan. Maybe give yourself a little brief intro of who you are and who you're with.
Yeah. So you guys know who I am, Ishan. I work on Orbit, and I'm also working on Hermes with my co-founder, Rob, who's on stream right now, but it's Robert online. Essentially what we're building right now is, you could think of it as a MakerDAO for all types of currencies. So your peso, your euro, your pound, all on chain in a decentralized manner. And then Hermes is just a perpetuals exchange, like hyperliquid for Stellar.
Cool. You guys have been on Stellar for a while now, or building on Stellar for a bit.
Yeah, I've been in Stellar since around 2020. Like I knew about it. I never held any Stellar because 2020 me was 16 years old, so I didn't really hold any cryptos to begin with, other than Monero and Bitcoin.
Young bucks out here, man.
Yeah,
like every good 16-year-old, holds Monero.
yeah. I'm a big Monero guy. Like I have some Monero stickers here. Like I just hold a bunch of them. But no, I've been a big fan of Monero. I knew about Stellar because and this is where like compliance from SDF wouldn't like this, but I knew about Monero because a lot of people in the Monero trading groups would talk about how, let me send you USDC on Stellar. You could go withdraw this for cash on a MoneyGram machine. So a lot of Monero people would sell their Monero for USDC to get cash.
Cool.
So the KYC is minimal. But then that's how I found out about Stellar. At first, I didn't like it because I'm like, oh, this is just XRP, right? It's not the best thing. But then, I think 2-ish years ago is when I actually learned about, the whole ramping system. Like, oh, that's unique, right? Like, that's something I could go with. And then Sorbonne came around, and I was like, oh, maybe I should make this idea. I've always had this on my mind. And then I actually got funding. I'm like, oh, shoot, now I got to actually make it. So now we're here, right? So
you guys have a pretty big team, though, with Zenith, right? So Zenith is your dev lab or your group of developers?
Yeah, it's the group of developers. That also came about 2-3 months after we actually got grant funding because, again, we're all college students. So it's like, okay, now we got to actually figure this out. But yeah, Zenith used to be our gaming group name. So we're like, okay, let's just take that name, throw it into crypto. So the protocols part is new because we're like, we have to distinguish it, right? So because we still use Zenith as a gaming group. But yeah, that's pretty much all of us.
Because you guys have a pretty interesting story of how you guys got together with Zenith.
Yeah, we all essentially we just all played this Minecraft server together, but it was an anarchy Minecraft server, meaning there was no rules. So you could assume, I'm not gonna say, but you could assume what no rules mean. And that's pretty much where we met all each other. I was the guy always doing the big projects, the one that YouTubers would make videos on. If you do find my username online, there's the YouTube videos with me from a Russian YouTuber, Spanish YouTuber, this guy from Florida, 10 million plus views. and it's just like random Minecraft projects I was doing. Robert, he was really like, he was more the shy guy, not very social, but he was doing all the cool stuff like making hack clients for Minecraft or like exploits. So that's kind of where we came apart. Like I was more of the talkative guy, actually figuring out what we should build, and then Rob was the one making like all the computer programs, actually figuring out how we could build it out. So that's pretty much. And then Ben was also there, but Ben was more of like, he's just a chill guy we hang out with.
So pretty much everything you've explained has roots in gaming. So you can pretty much. I think in Toronto when we were chatting, you're like, I think you asked me something about gaming, and I was like, man, not me. It's not the guy. Raph would be more your guy like that. But cool, man. It's good to learn a bit more about your history and all that stuff. But let's get into the real meat and potatoes in the project. But I know a lot of these things people can kind of get a little in the weeds with the tech side of stuff. So I'm assuming a lot of the people that are going to watch this recording are going to be kind of your average Joe user. And what we've learned on Stellar since smart contracts came about is that the education side of trying to teach people that aren't familiar with anything related to DeFi and some of these more advanced things, anything beyond payments, has been a little bit of an uphill battle. So I just want to make sure we try and, I guess, explain it like you're five, kind of most of this stuff. But I mean, I guess the first thing, I mean, you already mentioned kind of what the platform does, but I think on the surface, people would probably want to know how is this going to benefit me, or like me as a regular user? Do I have use for this? Like, who is this going to be for, and how can it benefit the normal user on chain? Do we freeze him?
We were just trying to figure out the ping issues right before we started. like I got 9 millisecond ping, man. I'm good.
9? Yeah.
Am I lagging or is
we got audio back, no video. It's always good to know that someone else is having the same issues, as long as I'm not the one. Although I do have my lights in my office turning all sorts of different colors, and I notice it's turning my face purple and red and yellow now and everything. So it's always interesting. Forgot to turn that off.
And just turn them off and see if I can turn them on.
Got to turn on the low quality stream or something like that. But what's a good live stream without some technical difficulty?
Maybe we kind of showcase the website and we go from there until Ishan's ready here. Oh, Ishan's rejoined.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, so
I've got audio. I can hear you.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
I just switched to my PC, so what's it called? No mic, no camera for me today because
all good
working. But yeah, so I heard most of your question before I tweaked out. Okay, so why would someone use an OrbitCDP stablecoin over a traditional stablecoin like USDC or EURC? So first things first, we could just talk about the issues with centralization, right? So you could take your USDC, for example. If I'm a user in, let's take like a country like Vietnam, right? I'm a user in Vietnam that wants to hold US dollars. I would hold USDC. But then let's say the US courts subpoena the Circle Group, hey, you got to freeze this address. They might be involved with something illegal, right? Even though I'm not an American citizen, they could always just freeze my money, right? Now, and that was kind of the promise with crypto. That's kind of why I got into like, this is money that can't be touched by governments. You completely own it, right? But with USDC and USDT, like all these different stable coins, even the ones that claim to be decentralized, like Athena's USDE, they're all like have a freeze function. They could be frozen at any moment. Same thing goes for EURC. So from that aspect, if you don't want to be controlled by any centralized bounds, that's the one place you would go to, like an Orbit or a DAI. But outside of that, like, why would anyone need like a Mexican stablecoin, right? Like, I don't even think people from Latin America would want to even hold their own native currency. Most of the time, they probably want to hold dollars. But I could give you a perspective from like a Mexican business owner, right? Like, let's say you need to get a loan for your business, right? Every business needs loans once in a while. You want to grow your business, so you go to your local bank, for example, and I don't know for the Mexican one, but I know in Brazil the current interest rate per month is 6%, right? Like in America, it's not even 6% a month; it's like 3% a year. So you're already paying such a high interest rate. But on chain, you could probably get a lower interest rate sometimes, maybe like 4 or 5% a year. Sometimes you'll see like really high, but it jumps around a lot. But let's just say 3 to 4% a year on like Aave. Now you're borrowing this USDC. You got to provide some capital to it. So let's say you gave capital like you gave Bitcoin as capital, right? Now you have that USDC. You sold that USDC for Mexican pesos because the average Mexican is not going to take dollars, right? Now you're spending however you want, and you have a loan cheap interest. But now the problem is, let's say the Mexican peso devalues compared to the dollar. Now to pay back your loan and get back your Bitcoin, you gotta spend more Mexican pesos to pay back those dollars, and that really hurts any business outside of the U.S. Because if your currency is like devaluing compared to the U.S. dollar, you're gonna have a harder time paying that loan. And for like big businesses, they usually don't have these issues because they do like a forward contract with the US dollar with their local currency. So like, Apple, for example, is not holding a bunch of euros to pay their European developers. They do a forward contract to borrow euros for a time being and they get dollars, right? So in this sense, if you're a business from Latin America, to avoid those currency risks, you'd rather just hold Orbit stablecoins, right? You could hold your local currency, and whenever you want, you could always go back to the dollar, or if you want, just hold. You could even on and off ramp it through blind pay, for example. So like with Brazil, you can hold like an Orbit stablecoin that's for the Brazilian real and on and off ramp it in 2 to 3 seconds, right? So if I hold Pix, right? If I hold money on Pix, I can on and off ramp it through blind pay, get an O Brazilian, and then if there's a blend pool where I could, borrow, earn yield on it, I could. And whenever I want, I could just get it back in my money. I don't have to think about the dollar at any moment. I'm just thinking of my own money, right?
So we're thinking, like, I do like the idea that it's a stable coin that's not controlled by a third party. It's like a trustless stable coin that can't be controlled by anyone. And then we're all kind of participating with a stable coin that we can easily trade for other stable coins and then on and off ramp that synthetic stable coin.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think another major thing is like you won't really see like a Mexican peso stablecoin, right? There really isn't a huge need for it, right? So if there is a Mexican stablecoin group like that does come out, you have to trust that entity to not actually, rug pull your money, right? Because there's a lot of stablecoins that come and go. A big one that I remembered in the past was Flex USD. It was like this. It wasn't a small one, but it was owned by an exchange. They were operated in the Caribbeans, a USD stablecoin. And then when their exchange went defunct, their stablecoin went defunct, and all those members, everyone holding the coins lost their money, right? So if you're thinking about another currency outside of the U.S. dollar, you're going to think of their regulatory headspace like, maybe it's riskier than the US just to even hold that currency or participate in a company outside the US. So that's another thing, right? Like Orbit like really removes those risks because it's just like MakerDAO, right? So like the interest rates are based off the blend pool, the supply is based off the DAO, right? If you really want you know, you want an Egyptian pound, all you really need is a reflector oracle, right? And that reflector oracle, if it has that FX price feed, you could plug it in, and within like 1 to 2 weeks, you could have that digital currency.
So that kind of speaks on that safety element. How does it maintain like the peg? How is it able to like stay at the same price?
Yeah. So before Blend V2, we had something called a peg keeper, which is pretty similar to Curve's USD peg keeper, which is essentially just a flash loan that could help pay off like a small term like difference. So let's say like the price of oUSD is like $1.01. You could do a quick flash loan to get oUSD from the pool, sell it off to make the price back to $1, and then you'll have a debt on oUSD and then you'll have a credit on USDC, right? And then vice versa, when the price goes down, you could use that USDC to buy oUSD to pay off your debt, right? It would just be a quick flash loan through a bot. So you won't really see like an inflation bug where everyone's just borrowing a bunch of oUSD to dump the price, because then you'll just have too much oUSD that isn't backed by anything, right? It's usually just a peg keeper bot. But now since Blend V2 has flash loans, you'll probably just see the average person just using the blend pool to do this. So that was kind of like one of the things too. Like Orbit did get delayed a lot because every time we would build, there'd be a new thing that comes out, or we have to wait for something to come out. So when we did make this was new, right? There was like I forgot there was like another group like XYC like Lou or loans, like
Yeah.
whatever it was. It was like a flash loan system. We were going to integrate with them, but then we're like, okay, we'll just do it this way. And then now Blend V2 has flash loans. So it's like, okay, does it really matter? But the same idea goes, right? If someone really wants to, they could just use the peg keeper. Like we're still probably going to push out the peg keeper, but the chance someone uses that over a Blend V2 like flash loan is probably very slim, right?
So you guys currently are on Blend, but you guys have your own UI planned. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you go to orbitcdp.com, I mean orbitcdp.finance, my bad. Right now, you'll see like our UI. The main reason why we decided to go about making our own UI over just using the Blend UI is say you're like an average user. If you go to the Blend page right now, you're gonna see like 6 different pools, 4 of them being on V1, 3 of them being on V2, and then on top of that, like if you want to keep having so many different currencies, like you can't have a pool with like an Argentinian peso and a US dollar on it, right? They both have different requirements, they're both different currencies. Um, so you need to have separate pools. So if you're a user that's just we say go to the Blend UI and there's just 5 different pools, how do you know which one to pick? Right.
Yeah.
So we decided let's just make a simple UI where it's only the stuff for Orbit. So you could swap on it. You won't have to go to like an Aquarius or SolarSwap. Just swap on the same page. You could borrow on the same page, pay back on the same page, just keeping it simpler, right? And the cool thing is like this is also like bring composability to the ecosystem. That was like one of the main things when me and Rob first made Orbit. We're like, we want to build on something else because that's cool. Because if something happens to us, we'll also have another project on top of that to give us support. Like for example, like Blend right now, they handle the collateralization, interest rate, the liquidations. That's all Blend, right? SolarSwap handles all of the like swapping features. So if you want to swap your XLM to oUSD, you could. Even Aquarius, if that was integrated, and then we're just setting up the actual tokens itself, making sure everything's well, like safe and well. Um, and then yeah, like if you didn't want to use the UI, you could always just go to Blend, right? Like there isn't a big difference. Um, like even a market maker can just attach their Blend UI and they'll be fine. But if you're just a normal user that's trying to get like an Mexican peso, you probably just use our UI just for your convenience.
Are you leveraging then the liquidity from the blend pools? Like, does the blend backstop helping you guys secure your assets?
Yeah, so just because we're built on top of Blend, if there's any like liquidation that does occur, the Blend backstop that's for our pool, so that 15K would be handling that, right? And there'll be like an auction bot that we've set up also. Anything regarding a Blend pool that you already know for like the yield blocks pool is the same thing for Orbit. And we just did that too because a lot of people trust Blend, right? So it's easier for people to trust this new stablecoin, even if it's for a random currency like the Argentinian peso, because they know the foundation is Blend, right? So there's an easier trust there's more trust there, making it easier for us too because we're also new to the ecosystem and there were a lot of delays, so trust is a big thing as well, right? Because we can't say like we back these stablecoins one to one with an actual fiat currency when in reality it's being backed by XLM, right? So you have to
Yeah.
create some type of system there where people are like, like with Blend, for example. I mean, with not with Blend, with Blind Pay, for example. How can we get them to actually trust that these stable coins are good, right? Like you can actually on and off ramp these, and you'll be fine. So like that was another major thing we had to figure out while we built out the system.
And the oUSD, is there liquidity on SolarSwap for that, or where is there any liquidity for oUSD?
Right now, like, well, we got a liquidity grant from Stellar, so we're gonna slowly push that out. Right now, it's between SolarSwap and we're thinking about making an Aqua pool because Aqua we could do a 10 bips stable swap pool. Um, but there'll be liquidity out soon. We're also working with SDF to get some liquidity into it as well. Um, also because like now with the blind pay partnership coming through, that's like it would be really big for Orbit in general because what we're trying to do is with blind pay, we've already worked out a deal, but it essentially be zero FX fee, right? The only fee you'd pay is the bank fee. So if you have 100 pesos on chain through Orbit, you could off ramp it through Blind Pay into your Mexican bank account and get 100 pesos minus whatever the bank fee is, like 1 or 2 pesos, right? So for consumers, that's really good because now you don't have to go through MoonPay and pay 7 to 8% to go on and off and have to do all these different swaps to get the currency. And on top of that, like if you're just someone trying to get into crypto, this is also like one of the cheapest and fastest ways you could get in, right? Like for example, like with Circle takes around 8 to 10 business days just to on and off ramp, and then on top of that too, the actual, doing KYC and setting up a business account as like for the average startup who's just using Clerky to make a company is pretty much impossible to get. But through blind pay, KYC for businesses like 1 to 3 business days, and actually on ramping it and off ramping it through ACH or wire in the US, it's 1 to 3 business days, right? This one time last Friday, I literally got my money in 2 hours, right? So the off ramp experience is very good, and even for like countries like Brazil, like I said before, 2 to 3 seconds to on and off ramp, right? So you could hold a Brazilian peso on chain. I mean, not peso, real, and if you want to go back into picks, 3 seconds you're out, right? So if people really want to build something as cool as like a decentralized Uber, right, where it's using smart contracts to actually hold the funds, where the driver can hold the funds, the passenger can hold the funds, when the transaction's over, it just sends out the money, right? The end user can always use Pix in Brazil, right? They will
Mhm.
think they're not even touching crypto, and then same thing for the driver while everything's happening on chain, right? Like they won't even feel it. That's kind of the power of what Orbit's bringing with the reducing any currency risks, and then blind pay with on and off ramping capabilities.
So I find that you guys are doing lots of work in building partnerships for people to integrate your synthetic or your collateralized stablecoin.
Yeah,
Uh,
like
what's your ideal kind of partner that you guys are looking for to integrate?
I think right now mostly with the blind pay stuff, it's mostly just trying to get wallets. So one of the main wallets we're talking to right now is Cake Wallet. So Cake Wallet, if most people won't know them because they're a Monero wallet, but they're pretty big in the privacy space. They were pretty interested mostly because of the fact like outside of the KYC with blind pay for like any privacy advocate or like Monero guy, that's like a major red flag. But just because we're a decentralized stablecoin, most of them were like willing to, right? They were like, oh, this is pretty nice. You could go in and out with a decentralized stablecoin, which you can't do. Like with DAI, unless you're going through Coinbase, you still have to sell it for like another stablecoin to actually to get an actual fiat redemption. Um, but yeah, mostly just talking to wallets right now, like Ramp Me Daddy, Cake Wallet, Meru, getting those guys to actually integrate us because once the blind pay integration is live, they could pretty much make any user experience like pretty seamless, like on and off ramping would be very seamless and no fees whatsoever. So mostly just getting wallets, right? The more wallets that have us, the better. Because then yeah, if I have oUSD and I say, hey, you want to get like a payment, I could just send the other person oUSD and their wallet would have it, right?
I wanted to real quick back up to you mentioned you wanted to build on top of other projects, and so you've obviously got Blend and SoraSwap. Do you have your own contracts that have been through audits, or do you really you're using so much other stuff that there's really nothing in the middle that you guys had to worry about? I mean, obviously Stellar has the audit bank to allow companies to go through that to get some audits funded. Is that something that you guys have gone through or are going to go through, or what's the
Yeah,
status on that?
we already went through audit a while back. And yeah, it would since we built on top of Blend, the audit itself wasn't as rigorous as like, the Blend or SourceSwap audit. Which is good, right? Because again, you don't want to we don't want to make something too complex. But yeah, we do have smart contracts outside like that actually creates the tokens, maintains it, the DAO. So those got audited. We're completely audited, everything involved with Orbit. Um, so no fear. Everything's good. But yeah,
No
that's like
fear. We're gonna make a clip of that and just save that for the future. No fear. No
yeah, the
fear.
deep peg event. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's like another major thing too, because I mean that's the cool part about Blend. Since Blend is a primitive, you're able to build on top of it. Compare that to like an Aave or like another lending pool on some other chain. You can well, I minus Aave. Like any other lending pool, you couldn't really build on top of it. But Blend gives you that ability. So making a CDP on them was relatively easy.
Yeah.
And are
And I
you
think
guys
it's been a common misconception in the ecosystem a little bit. Like Blend is not a one to one. Like Blend isn't the thing. Blend is the thing that you use to make a thing, So it's been
Yeah.
kind of something we've had to educate people on. But
are you guys looking for people to build different types of products on top of this CDP protocol?
So that's what we were actually thinking like while we were building we were like okay we want to be able to have people to build on top of Orbit. Um, but later on down the line, we're like, if people are building on top of Orbit, they're probably just gonna build on top of Blend anyways. Um, but then when we were building out Orbit, we kind of realized how we would need like a really strong FX market for it because in real life, if I'm trying to trade the US dollar to Canadian dollar, I'm not doing it as spot exchange. I'm probably taking maximum 1,000x leverage, right? And banks and like institutions are willing to get that much leverage because it's currencies, right? Like currencies don't move that much in comparison to like a stock, so it's relatively safer to give that much leverage. But you can't do that right now in Stellar, right? It's impossible. So then that's where Hermes came out of, like building that perpetuals exchange on chain. And then that's where the whole primitives idea of building on top of it comes out of. So you could build on top of Orbit right now, right? You just make another blend pool, or you could build on top of the current Orbit code base. But with Hermes, like we want to make that like more primitive like. So essentially we're building it like a ERC 4626, which is just it's just a standardized it's a standardized vault system on any EVM. So like, Yearn uses a 4626. Most of your lending pools, anything yield related uses this type of vault. So we're trying to bring that over to Stellar. We're going to build that for Hermes. So let's say there's like $1 million in the Hermes vault. If you're another dApp that uses the same vault standard, you could borrow some idle capital from the Hermes pool for your own, right? If it has like a higher yield, for example, like let's say Hermes, there's only a 5% yield, and there's like, you know, 500,000 of that capital is just not being used, and you have another vault, same standard, maybe it has a 10% yield. You could then borrow some of the liquidity from our vault into yours without the end user having to like take the LP token in, have to convert it, send the money back out. It just makes it way simpler in that chance. It's not as composable as like a blend pool, but again, it is it's already well adopted in EVMs. So bringing that over to Stellars, it makes sense, right? So maybe we'll see some cool stuff like like forward contracts, option contracts, stuff like that with the 4626. Um, but I don't see that being built directly on top of Orbit. But someone could just take the Orbit stablecoins and make those type of things like a forward contract, right?
Can anyone make their own stablecoin? And can it be other things than stablecoins? Could it be like different types of commodities?
I mean, anyone can make anything, honestly. Like you just need to have a Oracle. So like with Reflector, we need to get those FX price feeds. So once they actually got that in, any of those FX price feeds can just be plugged in, and now you have a stablecoin for it, right? The actual like parameters and like setting up how much that should be, like that's relatively simple, right? So you can even ChatGPT that, right? Like ChatGPT, I'm making this stablecoin. These are the parameters I need to fill out. Like, what do I need? But
That
yeah,
sounds
like
terrifying, by the way.
yeah, it's really just like you need an Oracle, right? Like if you don't have an Oracle for it, it's not gonna happen.
Can somebody just like write their own, get the price feed, and then launch their own stablecoin on the OrbitCDP website? Like, do you guys have a process to listing those stable assets? Are you guys just listing everything? Like, how does that work for showing within the interface?
Yeah, like we do have a DAO already, like the code for it's already done, right? Now we just have to actually implement a UI for it, but there will be a DAO that you have to actually go through, right? And the DAO would decide like, okay, we like this idea, we'll push it through. But again, when it comes to the pools, we're probably going to have multiple pools because again, like you have like your very strong currencies, like your Canadian, your euro, your pound, your dollar, like those currencies you could have in a single pool, and you'll be sure like one of them won't just depeg, right? One of them won't just dump in value compared to each other. But then you have like your not so very stable currencies like your Argentinian peso, your Venezuelan, your Brazilian, even right, Colombian. You can't really put those currencies in the same pool because the parameters would be pretty similar. So you probably have a separate pool for like reserve currencies, emerging market currencies, and then higher risk currencies. Um, but then again, like it'd be super simple for the users end because on the Orbis site, you won't have to switch between pools. You could just pick which currency you want, right? You don't have to really handle that hassle, right?
And so that's going to live separate from OrbitCDP, right? Like as far as a different domain and everything, that's totally separate, right? There's no
Wait, what do you mean?
the perp exchange that's going to exist outside of like the UI for OrbitCDP, or that's part of the same thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be outside the UI. Like in the beginning, we want to. It was supposed to be very like tight with each other. Like, oh, you could take your oUSD, put it into Hermes, get yield. Um, because at this point when we were making this, there was no CCTP, so we're like, it makes sense, right? Because you could just on ramp it through blind pay and you'll go in pretty easily. But Raja said that CCTP should be coming in within the year, so I mean it's pretty obvious. Like we'll just have a USDC vault. Like we'll have oUSD vaults. We'll have other types of vaults where you could use, because in theory you could just make any vault. Because the thing with the Hermes vault is it's just one single collateral type. So you'll have USDC, and then it's just going to keep bouncing out on that, right? You're not going to have a USDC, XLM, Bitcoin, right? just with this vault alone, it's just one currency, and that's just going to be debited and credited. But yeah, like from the end user, like if I could just CCTP, like move my money from Solana over to Stellar, and I could put it into this Perps exchange, I'm not going to try to swap it out for another stable coin just to do that. So it's going to be separate, but it'll still be an option on Hermes, right? Like you could use these other currencies for trading.
Gotcha. Real
Is
quick,
there-
just a quick note. If anyone's watching on, let's see, Twitter or X or YouTube or anything and has any questions, make sure to drop those. We'll keep it on. We don't have too much more, I think, to cover. So if there's any questions, make sure to leave those and we'll cover them at the end. Just real quick.
One of my things is like, how do you like? Yes, there's advantages for having like a collateralized stablecoin, but is there any kind of reward structures or yield mechanisms with the stablecoin? Like, is there any incentives of holding the synthetic asset versus like another stable asset?
Yeah, so we kind of thought of that too, because yeah, our main thing was like, yo, who the hell wants to hold an Argentinian peso? Like, I would not be holding an Argentinian peso. So we were thinking of some ways to incentivize that. So one's obviously the DAO token, but that's also something that could be discussed later on, honestly, because we're trying to do more of like a point system for that, like combining it with Orbit and Hermes. Because if you look at any DAO token right now in Stellar, they're all going down to oblivion, right? It just keeps getting dumped as soon as someone gets it. So we were like, yeah, we probably wouldn't want to do that because there could be some risk. What if someone just buys a bunch of cheap DAO tokens, makes some random stable coin, and then just dumps it, right? That's not really good overall. So, and we don't want a DPEG event. So that's gonna happen later on. But I mean, right now, like if there was a market for oUSD, like the markets are liquid, all that stuff, you could buy oUSD, put it back into the blend pool, and since you'd be supplying oUSD, you can't borrow XLM with it or collateral with it, but you can start earning yield with it, just like any other yield asset on blend, right? So that's kind of the yield incentive there. Um, Now, will there actually be like a yield, like a 2-3% yield? I'm not too sure. It really depends on what the supply and demand is. So maybe for like your smaller stable coins, like a Mexican peso, if a lot of people are borrowing it, the yield will be super high. And because of that, like you'll probably see like a lot of people buying Mexican pesos on the market, putting it back into the yield into the blend pool to actually earn that yield.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like the major thing is convincing users to hold other assets that they've developed trust with. I think that's like the hardest sell. But I think the biggest selling point of OrbitCDP is that it's open to anyone and anybody can integrate. So hopefully that has strength, like if anybody can have any kind of asset on chain, I think that's where the strength of OrbitCDP is. Is there are you guys launched OrbitCDP as we speak right now? What's the timeline? And then you also talked about the Perp exchange. Are we looking for a launch for the next couple of months for Hermes? What's the timeline looking like?
Yeah, so Orbit is completely launched. When it comes to liquidity, that's still coming in, right? Like SDF is putting liquidity, we're slowly putting in liquidity too. And then with the blind pay situation, like that liquidity is also coming in. But other than that, like oUSD's out, and then the other currencies are going to slowly come in because we didn't want to just spam everyone with 10 different currencies and let everyone just pick. We're like, okay, let's just do it slow and steady. Either way, that's what we've been doing. But then with Hermes, we're trying to push out testnet by July 20th, like near end of July. If everything goes well, it should be out by then. Um, and then hopefully mainnet, if everything goes well, is good stuff with the audit. End of Q4, like somewhere in Q4, it should be out.
Cool.
But yeah, no, like at the end of the day, with like Orbit, again, it was a huge learning experience too because we are a bunch of college students. But there is like a lot of benefits with just using Orbit compared to like a USDC, right? Like that's the same idea. Like, why would someone want to hold DAI over USDC? There is a huge market for it. There still is like there's $5 billion. No, there's like $4 billion in DAI, and then I think there's like $8 billion in like their new stable coin, which is like USDS, something like that. It's like Sky.money. There's a huge amount of money in decentralized stablecoins. It's really just your bang of the buck. Like if you prefer decentralization, if you prefer having different stable coins or being able to like use this currencies outside the reach of these centralized entities, you'd probably want to go for Orbit stablecoin, right? Even if you're like in South America, if you prefer holding an O Mexican peso over having some entity holding pesos for you, right? It's really who do you trust, right? Like if you're someone that really I don't really trust that entity. I don't really think they're, going to hold my money, or they might just rug me. You go for the decentralized system. But if you don't really trust a decentralized system, like, okay, this can probably just depeg and there's nothing backing me, I'll probably go for the entity holding my fiat, right? There's nothing wrong in each system. It really just depends on your point of view, right? So, and that's kind of the thing too. We kind of want to make it seamless. Like, you don't have to even worry about that. So again, with the blind pay situation, right? No FX fee whatsoever. You could redeem it if you want, right? So if you're a Mexican user and you have O pesos, you don't have to really worry what's going on in the background. If you want money for it, you could just off ramp it through blind pay. If you want to on ramp, you can on ramp through blind pay, right? And then with all these different wallets that we'll eventually get connected with, you don't have to think about, okay, I got to download this wallet to hold it, or, I got to do this to actually get it. You just hold whatever wallet on and off ramp through blind pay, right? Um, but yeah, that's pretty much what we're trying to do with Orbit now. It's just mostly just pushing it out.
And then I think a lot of people that are listening to this will kind of have the thought of, this kind of sounds a little bit similar to FXDAO, and that's one of the questions I see. Like, what's the comparison that you would make to FXDAO, a project that people might already be familiar with?
Yeah. So I guess the first funny thing I should mention is, like, when we were making Orbit, when we pushed out that application, we didn't even know FXDAO existed. We thought we were like the first guys to come up with this idea. And then like a couple months after we like got the application, we just saw FXDAO come out of nowhere. And then we realized they did a grant application like 8 months prior. And we're like, okay, well, now we got someone else building the same thing, and they got that first mover advantage. But yeah, like, why would someone choose, like, what's the comparison with FXDAO and Orbit stablecoin? Like, if you want to choose a decentralized stablecoin, which one would you choose? Well, first one being with USDX, right? I think that's their stablecoin. It's a great stablecoin, right? Like, if you want to hold some type of euro or British pound right now, you would use FXDAO, right? Because Euro C has a good amount of liquidity. The pound doesn't even exist on Stellar, right? You would go to FXDAO. But the thing is, if you look at the markets right now, FXDAO is usually just a lot of sell pressure. So if I wanted to go on right now, I could put in XLM, get USDX, sell that for XLM, put that back in, and just keep repeating the process until I have 5x leverage. And right now, that's how most people do their leverage trading on Stellar. Because I'm gonna be personal, like, I do use FXDAO to do that, right? I use it for leverage trading easily on chain. Because right now in New York is like the hardest place to do anything crypto related. So if I want to do leverage trading without having to be geo blocked, I'm just going to use FXDAO, right?
So
But
how I see it is FXDAO right now, you have a certain set of currencies. Like, you can do the same kind of thing, but the element of composability is different from my understanding with OrbitCDP, is that anybody, as long as they have a price feed, is able to do it. FXDAO, I'm not 100% sure the mechanism of making your own synthetic assets or getting that approved by FXDAO, but it seems like you guys are starting to think about new assets on chain.
yeah, because on top of that too, since we're a blend pool, anyone can even build on top of us. Well, with FXDAO, you got to really rely on FXDAO actually building out, like, APIs, RPCs, stuff like that, like SDKs to actually build on FXDAO. Which is the difference too, right? Like, you won't really have to rely on that. Everything will be done by the DAO. Everything's done on blend. So there's also a safety factor there too. Like, if all of a sudden blend like crashes, yeah, Orbit's gonna crash too because we're built on top of blend. But if blend is constantly getting audited, they keep pushing out new updates. Orbit's gonna keep receiving new updates, keep getting these new audits, right? Like, if we push down the V1, we just have a blend V1. But since blend went to V2, now all the cool stuff that came out with V2 is now with Orbit, right? So if you're an Orbit stablecoin holder, you'll get those new stuff like flash loans, for example, which is nice, right?
That's a big difference too, right? Because you guys are leveraging flash loans, and FXDAO is leveraging these stable pools within Aquarius.
Yeah, pretty much. And I personally don't like stable pools because for like a peg mechanism, right? Because they use it for a peg mechanism. Um, Mostly just because, like, from my perspective, like, let's say I'm a really big holder, right? FXDAO doesn't have a cap on how much USDX can be minted right now. So I could go in with like $10 million of XLM. I borrow like $5 million worth of USDX. I can just dump the whole pool and then return my USDX at a cheaper value, and then I just pretty much dump the whole market, right? And I get a bunch of USDC from the stable swap pool, right? In general, you could do that with Orbit too, but that's not the way we're keeping our peg, right? Because then you'll have the flash loan on the side that actually brings it back up. Well, you can't really do that with FXDAO, right? You could with the blend pool that FXDAO has, right? You could do a flash loan with it, but there's not that much money in the blend pool to begin with, right? So there's like pros and cons to both systems. But the major difference I've been saying to people, like again, like when we were in Toronto, a lot of people just said this is like FXDAO. The major difference is you could actually on and off ramp this without having to sell for USDC first, right? Like with that blind pay partnership, there's no FX fee, right? Like if I were to hold dollars on chain through Orbit, I could always know like no matter if the price even dumps down or if something happens, I could just on and off ramp it through blind pay, right? So
And that I
that's
know you mentioned it, I think in Toronto, or I talked to him in Toronto about it, but that's already like a done deal. That's already supported. Like the oUSD, they'll take that already, or is that something that's kind of the paperwork signed but it's not implemented yet?
yeah, the paperwork's not, but we're still working out how like we should build it out because they're also new to Stellar as well, right? Because I used to use them outside of Stellar. That's how we moved our grants actually, but we actually brought them into Stellar only a couple months back. So they only now pushed out Stellar during Toronto. So now they have to actually implement Orbit. Um, but for that to work out, there has to actually be liquidity in the system, right? Like if there's no Orbit stablecoins to begin with, they can't actually do anything. Because the way blind pay works is they hold a lot of US dollars and then they hold a lot of USDC and then they just debit a credit on each side, right? If someone puts in a bunch of USDC, they hold it and then they give out the dollars. And then when someone brings in the dollars, they hold the dollars, send out their USDC, right? Like they're not actually swapping anything. Maybe like on the end of the day, they do a rebalance where they're actually selling USDC or selling dollars. But that's pretty much why they're able to even offer such a low fee to begin with, right? It's 70 bips right now. But with Orbit, the deal is it would be no bips whatsoever, right?
Gotcha. Cool, man. Well, that's a lot of I mean, that's good information compared to FXDAO because I mean, when you started the conversation, I feel like a lot of people listening that were already familiar with FXDAO would probably think this sounds a lot like FXDAO, which is totally fine. I mean, there's competition is good. I mean, we've kind of been talking about some other projects that really need some competition to kind of help them. Competition breeds innovation. So, the
Yeah.
more competition, even if it is very similar, is going to be good for both projects for you guys to push. And obviously, you're a very smart guy, got a good team, and Enrique, we love Enrique. He's a super smart guy. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I
no
mean, like
problem.
FXDAO isn't it's a good protocol, right? Like if you have certain needs, you'd go to FXDAO over Orbit. Like, but the thing that I didn't really like the major thing I didn't really like outside of the stable swap pool, but that's more of like a technical difference, right? Like I don't think it's a good idea. Was you have like vaults on FXDAO, so if I put in 100,000 XLM, I'm just gonna have a bunch of XLM vaults, and then I have to decide like which vault do I want to close. Like with a blend pool, I could just slowly put in back capital to reduce my liquidation rate or like my liquidation price, and I just have one big position. While with FXDAO, I have so many different positions, right? So many different vaults. Um, and to the end user, that's not really like the best system, right? Like if a user see that they're about to reach liquidation, they just want to put in some more money to prevent that from happening, right? They don't want to have to close off a whole vault or change the whole vault entirely. Um, so that was another major thing. And again, we're built on top of Blend, right? So anything you could think of Blend is with Orbit, right?
Yeah. And you guys got a blend grant, I believe, right?
Yeah, we got a Blend grant, so that's only being used for the backstop, right? Like we can't actually move that out and sell it for USDC, so you
Yeah.
don't
I think
gotta
you guys
worry
have
there.
like a 3-year lockup on that, right?
I think so. Yeah, it was like 4 years when we first got it. So yeah, I think it's around 3 years now.
But you guys have to match with your own USDC.
Yeah, you gotta put in your own. We have to put in our own USDC. Right now it's actually SDF that's providing the backstop. But that's gonna be switched out soon. Like we're gonna eventually take over because we got the liquidity grant now. So everything will be mostly us on that end.
Cool.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Just some comments about some ideas for some next shows. FXDAO, a deep dive, and then a fireside chat with OrbitCDP and FXDAO. Nice. Is the idea for next show. But yeah, I think we covered a lot. Hopefully, we talked about it in a way that average people like me can understand it. And anyone else that watches this, is there anything you think we might have missed, or anything else you want to make sure you let people know about?
I think the main thing I would want to let people know about is just like wait for that blind pay thing. Right? I've been talking about it a lot. Blind pay is a great product too. So if you need on and off ramping, you should definitely go talk to them. Yeah, like that was me talking about it in Toronto. But yeah, like I think you can kind of see there, like domestic wire, ACH, PIX. You got Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, soon to be Europe, and the British pound, right? Like you could hold these types of currencies on chain. Don't have to worry about like some centralized figure freezing your funds or making you do KYC. And then if you ever do actually want to on and off ramp it, you could do it through blind pay, no fee whatsoever, other than like a bank fee, right? So that's a major, like that's a really big difference between FX DAO and us. Oh yeah, that's me and Bastion. And this is another cool thing. We're talking with Bastion right now. So okay, so like Raf, you're a Canadian citizen. Jerome, you're American, right? You don't have access to PIX, right? That's like their version of Zelle and e-transfer down in Brazil. So if you want to get access to their network, you have to be a Brazilian citizen. So if you're down there as a tourist, you're going to either need cash or Apple Pay. But if you look up Apple Pay usage in Brazil, it's only 13%. So the chance that that business would accept Apple Pay outside of like the touristy areas is pretty low. But they all do accept Pix, right? Like you could probably go to some guy playing the banjo like next to the beach. He'll have like a Pix QR code for donations. But
Cool.
what we're doing now is I'm working with Bastion so that for Meridian, you can actually have his wallet, get access to the Pix network, and pay with either oUSD or Brazilian. And you could just tap to pay, and within 2 to 3 seconds, just like an Apple Pay payment, you'll have paid for your product, right? So you don't have to sell it for actual cash. You don't have to worry about Apple Pay. You will already have access to their existing network. Um, and then we're trying to do like some cool things like an Amex point system where it's like, oh, if you pay with the Brazilian or some Orbit stablecoin through blind pay, you'll get like points. And then with those points, you could get experiences like this is not confirmed yet. Nobody quote me, but it's like there's like a soccer game happening, right? It's like $120 a person. But if you got a lot of points through Orbit, right, you deposit some Orbit stable coins into your what's it called, into the Bastion's wallet, you get like 10-20% off that experience, right? So like
I
it's kind
love
of
everything that you're talking about. You're talking about, solving for a specific problem, making like that stablecoin being used for real use case for people settling, getting the rewards, like just like they would with their credit cards. Like I love that you're talking about integrations within typical rail, like rails that we're typically used to, and just kind of making collateralized stablecoins, synthetic stablecoins, just more real.
yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want, right? Nobody wants to hold like their local currency on chain, but then they can't sell it, they can't do anything with it. It's just like a speculative asset, right? You want to actually use these stable coins as a currency. So like this is like the main showcase of that. Like come to Brazil, use your Orbit Brazilian stable coins, and you won't even need an Apple Pay or cash, right? You could be a true local, right? Because you can't get access to PIX, right? You have to be a Brazilian citizen to get access to it, but now you don't need to be Brazilian, right? So it's gonna be cool. I'm hoping everything works out too. So that'll be
Yeah,
a
I mean,
cool
as soon as you start talking about credit card points and stuff, you're speaking my language. That's
experience.
I'm very big into that. So as soon as you mention any sort of points or anything, then I'm in hook, line, and sinker. You got me there. So cool, man. Well, yeah, I appreciate you joining us. How do people keep up with you? Do you want a quick plug of all the websites and socials for everybody?
Yeah, so there's OrbitCDP, right? OrbitCDP.finance, that's the website. From there, you can also find our Discord, Twitters, and GitHub. So we're mostly active on Discord because we're all Discord guys. That's where you'll randomly see us playing video games. So just shoot us a message whenever. But we have a Twitter now. The funny thing is the Twitter has like 7,000 followers, but that all those 7,000 followers were from like a previous project of mine. It was dead, so I just remade the Twitter account for Zenith. So now it has like 7,000 followers. So yeah,
We
follow
need a
that.
new Orbit CDP Twitter account.
That I got no clue. I don't know if we would ever even make it because we only get like what, like 500 views a tweet. So we're like, do we really want to split that between two accounts?
Or
But
rename the Zenith one.
ooh, yeah, like we'll see. Yeah, but like yeah, no, we're pretty active on Twitter now too. But if you want to get direct contact with us, just message us on Discord. The Discord's on orbitcdp.finance. I'm also active in SCF too. Like if you go on the seller development Discord, I'll be there too.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the time. Is there anything else, Raf, that you wanted before we wrap up here?
No, we're good. Thank you, Ishan. I really appreciate you coming on and explaining this to us.
All good, man. Have a good one, guys.